Here you go.
That's something I need. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bootcamp. All right. That's just what you need.
So everybody ready to go? Yeah. Okay, let's get started. So today we're going to talk about digital real estate marketing, and it's going to be a very hands-on course, and we're going to start with a little bit of strategy, because one of the questions I get asked a lot, especially for anybody who wants to do a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad, or you hear about a concept that everybody's trying out, is okay, how do I jump in and how do I do that? But the answer is there's a whole bunch of strategy that has to happen prior to you actually being able to effectively create and launch a campaign. Otherwise, if you just follow along with what everybody's doing, you may get disappointed later on. For example, you're not getting the leads or the kind of prospective clients that you like, or your campaign flops even though you spent hundreds of dollars on it, right? So I'm going to take you through some of the strategic concepts. Here, you can have one of these. Thank you. I'm going to take you through some of the strategy, right? But before that, I'm going to share something personal with you, right? And everything I teach is based on my own personal experience, of course, and learning through trial and error, what works, what doesn't. And so, as you know, I'm managing now with RE/MAX Hallmark. I've been in the business for quite a while, but at the very beginning, while I was practicing actively as an agent, I too started trying out different marketing and strategies and campaigns, just like what you're doing now. And I'll share a personal experience with you of how my own personal marketing evolved, right? So, the very beginning, I wanted to farm an area. I grew up in Mississauga. I got my real estate license in Mississauga. This is well over 10 years ago, and I met my now wife, and she's lived in Scarborough. So of course, the natural thing to do is what? Move out to Scarborough. No choice, right? But the problem was, being licensed in Mississauga, all of my business was based out of Mississauga. All my clients, sphere of influence, even farming areas that I was working with. And so to go to Scarborough is basically like hitting a reset button. So some of you are newer agents starting out. Some of you may not have ever done farming and you're just starting out, and it's like starting from scratch, starting from zero. So when I moved out to Scarborough, my wife and I had bought a condominium there. We rented it out for a year prior to us getting married, and when we got married, we moved in. But my challenge was, how do I create business out of a place that I currently don't live in? I've never had any sales in, any clients in. And so I started with just one flyer and a website, right? This was one of the condos, and the condo actually that we bought in. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to start sending out farming postcards, and I also created a website for it, right? And so this is where my digital marketing journey kind of started. And so I didn't have any experience, no past sales, nothing to brag about. And so I thought, that the brilliant thing to do would be to copy every single real estate agent's ad, what they do, like the very big, handsome or beautiful face, through glamour shots or whatever, and then put a big, a big picture of the building behind you. And of course, this flyer I sent out a couple of times. I didn't really have anything systematic. I was with Century 21 at the time, and pretty much no response, right? And so I kept going with that, and through trial and error, practicing different techniques and strategies, one of which is being consistent with the mailings. And eventually I ended up getting a couple of sales, well, 2 sales. And so this flyer with no sales, just a picture of a background of the building, turned into this, right? And so I had two units that I finally sold and was able to brag about. But still, same thing, big face of me, right? Very, very busy flyer with so many different things going on with it. And so studying through different marketing courses and reading different marketing books, and then seeing what works, seeing what doesn't for myself, I started to create something that was working systematically, right? I'd also send out flyers like this, where, you've seen this because you do this all the time, right? You send out the just listed, just sold, all that sort of thing. But my evolution, eventually I joined RE/MAX Hallmark, and so a flyer that looked like this, and through intense study of what works in marketing strategies and digital marketing, all of a sudden got me into this. Now this is years of evolution, right? And it took a while before I got to this point, but a couple of things that I'm going to share with you today is, how do you turn your non-existent presence in a farm area or any kind of marketing that you want to do into something that has immense presence, so that you're able to then build off of the momentum of successful marketing strategies, particularly when it comes to digital, and create a presence that allows you to establish yourself as an authority, right? Now, most realtors, what they'll do is they'll pick up a flyer and they'll start copying it. Or they'll see a Facebook ad or Instagram ad and they'll say, okay, I want to do that too. But the thing is, that's a mistake. Reason why is because if you're just copying what somebody else is doing, you have no idea what their objectives are, what they're spending on the campaign, and what they're eventually getting out of it. They may not be getting any leads out of it, or not identifying any opportunities out of it, right? And so over the years, I've come up with a systematic approach as to how you should approach your digital real estate marketing strategy. I definitely, there you go, here, one of these. I'm not saying that digital real estate marketing will replace traditional forms. So for example, some of you are door knocking, right? Especially those of you who go through Sam's door knocking, what do you call it?
This little initiative.
Initiative, right? So that stuff, digital real estate marketing will not replace that, right? It's meant to supplement what you're doing to aggressively pursue business, right? So let me say that again. Whatever you're doing or whatever you're going to learn today is not intended to replace the active marketing that you do. You should always have active marketing as one of the pillars of lead generation and building up your business. This is meant to supplement it, right? And so for me, yes, I was out there meeting with people, creating relationships with property managers, doing open houses in these condos, and that's how I was able to take that digital presence and magnify it. Because once they saw who I was online and then meet me in person, right, it created the authority, right? And that created the credibility that I needed to pretty much get face-to-face with somebody, because real estate at the end of the day is a face-to-face, belly-to-belly business, right? And so what each and every single one of you have, what we're going to do today in this class is I'm going to go through a bit of the strategy first, because again, when realtors approach me, they say, John, how do I create this Facebook ad? Or I have this idea, maybe I want to try it out, right? But without a systematic framework to approach it, right, your campaigns will fail. And so what I've come up over time and through trial and error again, and through my experience with helping other agents out with real estate marketing, is a kind of step-by-step approach into how to create this. Now, there's a lot of different campaigns I'm going to be talking about today, and in as much as this is a hands-on course, it's going to be pretty much oriented towards what you want to learn. But the very beginning part of this, we're going to go through a framework together so that you can understand when you're putting together your campaign objectives, what is it that you need to consider and what do you need to keep in mind in order for you to be successful? Does that sound good? Perfect. Okay. Now I am recording this, so in case any of you want a video of it at the end, just going to make sure we don't get interrupted. If you want a video of this at the end, I am going to be uploading it, and I'll send you the link. If you're interested, all you have to do is give me your business card, right? And so let's get started. Regardless of whatever campaign you want to do, there's always going to be some sort of an objective, right? An objective is what do you want to achieve out of it. If you just say, okay, I want to create a Facebook ad, or I want to post on social media or Instagram, or I want to do this, without a purpose behind it, that campaign will likely fail, because at some point, you're going to keep running through it, and then you're going to realize, what was the point of this whole thing? Is it just to put my face out there? Is it just to copy what everybody else is doing, right? So with your pen and paper in hand, what I want you to write out, and by all means, this is not set in stone. You can use this strategy framework multiple times for various campaigns. This is not just one campaign, right? But for today, I want you to think of an objective that you might want to have. And so because we have a hands-on course, we have Karen who has volunteered, well, sort of voluntold because I asked her to do it. She reached out to me last week through Sam and said, John, I need your help with coming up with a strategy for this campaign for one of my listings, right? And so she's going to be the one who we're actually going to take step by step, not only through this, and through this, each and every single one of you will come up with your own objectives and strategies and all that, but she's actually going to come up and we're actually going to create a campaign together, right? Does that sound good? Right? So each and every single one of you, I want you to write your campaign objective. So what do you have in mind? So for example, a campaign objective might be, I want to be the most recognized realtor in my farming neighborhood, right? I want to become the most recognized realtor in my demographical farm, right? So geographical farm, demographical farm. Demographic means maybe you're targeting a particular age group, a particular, profession, right? Or particular culture, community. Right? There's a demographical farm too that's not based on a geographical physical area. I want, for example, my objective to be, I have a listing, I want it to reach as many people as possible. Or your objective might be, I have a listing, I want it to reach a specific target audience, which is what we're going to talk about today with Karen, right? So I want you to start with writing up an objective. I want to make a lot of sales is not an objective, right? You see why? It's not specific enough, and that's what everybody wants. It goes without saying, right? I want you to have a very clear and concise objective about what you want out of your marketing campaign today. And so once Karen's done, Karen's going to tell us her objective.
I do it for 2.
Absolutely, okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So my listing is in Blackstock, and
Okay.
it's,
I'll turn this off, so.
Sorry.
it's a 77-acre property with a house, a barn, and an outbuilding. And the house has been extensively renovated, but the kitchen has not been done, and the wraparound deck hasn't been done. So I'm looking for somebody who not only can afford to purchase it at 1.195, but also has an extra couple $100,000
Right.
to finish it, and in keeping with the quality that it has been done.
Right. So it's a very, very specific audience.
Yes,
Right.
and somebody wants to move to the country.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we'll keep that in mind. I hope you wrote that down because we're going to refer to it later. Anna, you wanted to share too? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, so I'm starting a new farming area,
Okay.
so I wanted to do one specifically, obviously, for that location.
Okay.
But I'm also, another initiative that I want to start is a referral network.
Okay.
So a referral network is obviously in various different areas.
Right.
So how would I launch that program in,
Right.
say, Ottawa or wherever? Just
And who would you be targeting for referrals?
Exactly.
Who would you be targeting? Yes.
Other realtors.
The realtors. Okay,
Right.
so good. So that would be your objective, right? So let's write that down. Okay. Number 2, identify your ideal client profile. So it's different from the actual objective itself. As you can see, this is a second step to it, because now that you know what you want to do, there's going to be somebody who you're trying to reach, right? So for example, in Anna's example, she wants to build out a referral network so that she can derive business from it. But who is your ideal client? Ideal client, or there's some of the marketers call this a customer avatar, right? So it's, or what do you call it? A profile, right? You got to describe who it is that you're trying to reach, because again, it's not enough to say, okay, I want to reach, I want to increase my blank, therefore I need to, or whatever. You have to be very specific. So if you want to increase your referral base, you've got to identify who is it that you want to add into that referral base so that we can create a campaign that will reach out to them. Otherwise, this is where a lot of campaigns fail. You'll put something out there, but it's not targeted to somebody specific, right? And so it's not going to resonate with anybody. So I want you to write there, who is your ideal client profile? So for example, in Karen's case, who is it that may be interested in buying that property, right? And the difficult thing about this is that you really need to think a little bit, because it may not, through trial and error, it may not be that first audience you think about. It might be a completely different audience. But this is where we have to identify that, because otherwise when we launch a campaign, how do you know who to reach if you don't have that profile in mind? So this is sort of a thought exercise. Who am I trying to reach? Describe them, right? So moving along with that, when you have your ideal client profile, and you can, the more concise and clear you are, the easier it will be to help identify them when we start to talk about target market later on. But what are their aspirations, right? So Anna's example, campaign objective is to build out her referral network. The ideal client profile are realtors. You might want to dig into deeper than, what kind of realtors? Is there a particular age group of realtor? Or do you want to target realtors in a particular area, but regardless of how old they are, or gender, or whatever, or experience? Or maybe you want to attract, realtors with 15 plus years of experience so that they have a good client database. So there's a lot of different factors, but what are their aspirations, right? What do they want, basically? So for example, realtors may want to refer a client out to somebody who they know is going to take proper care of them. When you know what somebody's aspirations are, it's going to be very valuable as we move along this. Karen's example, what is the aspiration of somebody who wants to buy that property? Do they want to come in and fix it up? Is it because they want to live a particular lifestyle, or they perceive that they're going to live a particular experience when they purchase the property, right? So in your campaign objective, once you've identified who it is you're trying to reach, I want you to identify what the aspirations of that person are. So back to my example here, my objective was to create a farm area basically, right? I wanted to sell lots of condos in my farm area. That's all I wanted to do, right? The ideal client profile is, if on the selling side, somebody who wanted to sell their condo and move up. And so I had a lot of clients that ended up selling their condo in the area and moving up to a bigger home. For first-time buyers, it's somebody who wanted to establish their real estate footing, I guess, or foundation by buying their first condominium, right? And so those are two different profiles, right? So the objective might be the same, sell a lot in this particular area, right? But you're not trying to reach buyers, you're trying to reach sellers. So if you're doing a farm, right, keep in mind that your objective would be, of course, to increase your market share and sales in that particular farm area, right, through door knocking, through other means, but you've got to identify, who are the ideal clients. Some of them are buyers wanting to move into the area. Some of them are sellers who want to leave the area, sell, and move to somewhere else, right? So the aspirations, what do they want, right? So a first-time buyer would want to live in the nicest condo at the most affordable price. Seller wants to get the most amount of money for their condo, right, with the least stress possible in selling their home. That's what an aspiration might be, right? Any questions about that so far? No? Okay, so let's flip to the next page. What challenges are they currently facing? So when you think about your ideal client profile, your customer avatar, or your target market, what is a challenge that they're currently facing that you might be able to solve? So a challenge for first-time buyer, they may not know anything about the market or the process of buying a condominium. For a seller, they may not know anything about the selling process. This is their first time selling a place, right? What's the problem or what's the challenge that your target market or your customer avatar or your ideal client is currently facing? Write it down. So Karen, for example, in your listing example, what do you think they might be facing right now as far as a challenge?
Well, I think there's a few different scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
One is people who live in more of a suburban or an urban environment
Yes.
that are wanting to get out of that and into something more private in
Yes.
a country setting.
Exactly.
I also think individuals who are outdoor enthusiasts, or
Mhm.
even say someone who has their own business, repairing cars and things
Right.
like that, the workshop,
Yes.
that, a place to be able to store your stuff.
Yes. So they have an aspiration, that's what they want, but the current challenge is they can't find that place, right? So Anna, in your example, because this is a referral network, agent to agent example, the aspiration is, of course, they want somebody, an agent wants to send a referral out to somebody who they know is knowledgeable enough to take care of their client, but what challenge might they currently be facing?
Well, maybe they don't know anyone in the area, so they
Right.
want to refer to someone they don't know,
Mhm.
or obviously they don't trust or aren't knowledgeable.
Perfect. So they don't know somebody in the area, right? They're not aware. Like, for example, somebody might be out in BC or in Vancouver, whatever, and they don't know any realtors here in Toronto, Durham to be specific.
Yeah.
But one of their clients might say, hey, Durham's great prices, I'm going to move to Durham, but they have no idea who to refer it to. So that's the challenge that they're currently facing. Now, the question is, how can you bring them from their current situation to the desired situation? So Seth Godin is really great. I don't know how many of you know or read Seth Godin. He's a fantastic marketer. But one of his definitions, his key definition to marketing is causing a change or a transformation to happen, right? And that's, in many cases, that's what our marketing should do at the end of the day, right? There has to be a transformation. Otherwise, whatever we're doing is pointless if it doesn't bring somebody from one state to another state, right? Or from one situation to their desired situation. So the question here is, how can you bring them from their current situation to their desired situation? Or how do you cause a transformation to happen? Now, I know this is a lot of thinking. You're like, hey, John, I came here to learn about Facebook ads. I came here to learn about digital real estate marketing. What's all this? You'll see that without this framework, the marketing that you're going to be doing is not going to be very effective unless you have a way to communicate it properly. Yes?
Well, I think the financing, qualifying for financing to make that move is a
Right.
big hurdle for people.
Yeah. So qualifying for financing, being able to afford. So there's a lot of different ways you can do transformation. So we'll use our two examples again here. Karen, how can you bring them from their current situation where, you know, somebody's aspiring to have that workshop or, you know, to have the kind of a property that you're offering? How do you bring them from that current situation to their desired situation? What do they need to do?
Well, I do believe that there's a number of people who may have these sort of aspirations. Like this is a sort of a long time coming. So I think bringing that awareness that something like this is
Yes.
available.
Right. Yeah. So bringing the awareness that it's available. So how do you bring them to the current situation, to the desired situation? Is you present to them that information so that they make the decision to buy. So Anna, how about you?
So I put like the educate, introduce, show
Yes.
like results, testimonials,
Perfect.
all in hopefully a 1 minute,
There you go.
30-second ad.
There you go. So you get the point. So Karen's approach would be to bring awareness to that particular property and tell them and communicate to them how they can go from A to B because of this property, right? Anna's approach is education based. How do you convince or convey a realtor to work with you within within the specified time period, right? And so that's your transformation. Now, another thing that we're going to talk about is a hook. A hook is basically, what do you have to offer, right? Without a proper hook or without a proper offer in your ad, it's going to be very inefficient. There's not going to be any results, and that's why a lot of advertisements fail, right? You go to Facebook ads, you put in an ad for whatever reason, but you never really thought about it. It's likely because you're not really offering something solid, right? So Karen, what would you offer as a hook, or what would you offer in order for to make that transformation possible? I mean, it's easy. This is where the challenge starts, right? I mean, it's very easy to just put the listing up there, but if it's not communicating something very specific, you're not going to get much results. And you can put this to the test. Like, I've run thousands of these ads, right? And a lot of our agents have run hundreds of these ads, and without a proper offer or a hook, right? And that's one of the things that I learned in my own marketing, and that's what I'm going to show you. What is it that you possibly have to offer in order for this to make it possible?
Yeah. So I think two things come to mind. One is, in this area under Oak Ridges Moraine, you can't build anything brand new.
Right.
Whereas this property has a house,
Yes.
it has a workshop, and it has a barn that it is in need of a lot of work. I mean, so, you know, the possibility
Yes.
to renovate and
Right.
maybe you could have a secondary, you know, so for multi-generational families
Right.
or things like that.
Yes.
So I think that's a hook.
Yes.
The other hook that is from the property is they have a managed forest program.
Yes.
So the property taxes are ridiculously low.
Right.
Instead of being $12,000 a year,
Yes.
they're 36.
Yeah. And so now you've identified a couple of things that you can now offer, right? That's different from what the current market is offering, right? And in Anna's case, what is your hook, or what is it attractive? What is it that you're trying to, or what could you possibly offer to make that transformation happen?
Right, so I think in terms of like the referral, I obviously have to somehow relay that the service is beyond the service of an average realtor. So show added features and benefits
Right.
to my services versus somebody else.
Right. Yeah. So you make that kind of an offer, and in order for them to take advantage of it, they have to go through and learn more and get more information, and we'll talk about that particular part of the campaigns. So on your next page, we're going to talk about the message now that you wish to convey to communicate your hook to your ideal client, right? So the reason why we're piecing this together is that ultimately when you create the digital real estate marketing campaign that you all want to run, you've got to start to write a message, or you've got to create a video with a message, right? So whether the ad copy is in the Facebook ad itself, or whether it's a video that you're going to present, without a proper message, there's no way for you to properly attract the target audience you want, convey to them, how do you get from point A to point B, and why you need my help in order for you to be able to do it. Regardless of whether you're marketing one listing, you're marketing your brand, you're marketing to a farm area, or you're marketing to other realtors, the message is very important in how you put these things together, right? And I'm going to go through a sample campaign with you in the second part of this, and then we're of course going through two examples here today. So what message will you convey to communicate your hook to your ideal client to make them aware of the transformation that you can offer, right? So remember, in this message, you're going to address their challenges and speak to their desires. That's where a lot of advertisements and campaigns fail, is that they're not properly speaking to that specific person, what their desires are and how you can provide the solution, right? So in Anna's example, right, you've identified other realtors. Maybe there's a specific kind of realtor, whether it's age group, demographic, gender, or whatever, whoever you want to work with, right? And their desire is they just want somebody on the other part of the country to send that referral to, right? And so your ad might just be, you know, the weak way of doing it is just post your ad, you know, hey, this is Anna, I'm from Durham, send me a referral, so I'll give you 25%. Anybody can do that, right? But if you can convey to them, I've been in the business for X amount of years, this is the clients that I've helped, testimonial, 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 testimonial. You know, connect with me and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, right? And by the way, if you click this button, I'm gonna send you an information report or informational video about the Durham real estate market and what you need to know to help convey, you know, or help convey the message to your clients with regards to this move, right? There's a lot of different things that you can do with that campaign, and now it becomes not just another run-of-the-mill campaign, but it becomes very specific. So for example, now in Karen's example, the message that you're going to communicate is you're using the desires of your ideal target or ideal client. You're going to be providing the solution to their problems or what they're looking for, and so the message that you're going to create is going to talk to them about not just, you know, here's feature A, B, C, D, E, but you're going to be talking about, you know, what's the benefit of buying this property versus everything else that's on the market, right? What is it that's unique about this property that's going to allow you to achieve your goals, your dreams, or your desires? And so that's your message. When you just start to craft, and one of the things that you mentioned to me is how do I reach that specific audience or that specific target audience? One of the ways is that message that you craft, right? Because somebody's looking for something specifically that you have to offer, that message will resonate with them. And for everybody else, you're just going to turn it off, which is fine. You want to reach the people that you want your message to reach. Next question is, what medium will you be using to attract your ideal client to your message? This being digital real estate marketing. More likely than not, we're using Facebook ads, which is also Instagram, right? So you can run the same ad campaign within Instagram. You can also use Google ads if you like Google ads. If you're on LinkedIn, you could use LinkedIn if that's where your audience is. Remember, the reason why we identified the audience is because in choosing your medium, you've got to pick the medium where your audience is. And Facebook being so big, right, as a marketing medium, more likely than not, you're going to be running digital real estate marketing ads on Facebook, right, which runs through Facebook's platform, Instagram platform, and whatever partner sites they have, right? So whenever you're running a Facebook ad, it is running on Facebook, Instagram, and partner sites. Partner sites being if somebody's browsing a certain website and they're running Facebook ads, they'll also see it there. So it's not just limited to Facebook and Instagram. I want you to realize that. So write down what medium you will use to attract. Now, if you're doing traditional marketing as well as digital real estate marketing, other mediums may be postcards, right? So direct mail postcards. If you're still using community newspapers, which are still pretty big actually, you might be in a community newspaper, right? There's a lot of different other mediums that you can use. What campaign assets do you need in order to make this possible? Now we're talking about the technical aspects of this, such as having a mailing list, right? If you're creating a referral network, Anna, right, you've got to get them to sign up to something, and so in order for you to communicate to them constantly, they've got to be on a mailing list of some sort, and that's what we're going to talk about today as well. You may need a landing page. So Facebook does have lead ads, which I'm going to show you depending on where we go with our workshop today, but if you're doing marketing off of, or lead generation off of Facebook itself, you have to lead them to some sort of a landing page, right? You need a video or image. So if you're creating an ad, right? So for example, Karen, your property has photos already, but maybe you're going to create a custom video based on the message that we talk about today, right? Or maybe you just use your images, but you type in, you know, you use their ad copy to convey to them why they should be buying that property. And then we're talking about ad copy as well. How do you write proper ad copy in order for you to be able to attract right audience? Okay, next page. One of the biggest questions as well I get asked is, you know, how much do I spend on this campaign, right? So how do you determine how much money to spend? And this is where we'll open it up for discussion. So Karen, without me telling you what to do, how would you have determined how much money you're going to spend? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but I want you all to sort of see what kind of ideas we have about budgets and ad campaigns. What would you spend on your campaign?
So a percentage of the revenue that I could potentially earn?
Okay. Did you read that first line? Is that what?
No, no.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, that's right on, right? So a
Word for
percentage.
word.
So one way to determine the ad campaign is how much am I going to earn from this, and I will apportion a percentage of it to that possibility of earning that much,
Mhm.
right? So that's perfect, actually. Anna, what would you have done?
I'm honestly not sure. I think
Okay.
usually when I look at a Facebook ad, I would type in, like when it's for a listing, I type in what the reach is
Yes.
for what the amount that I'm thinking of spending.
Right.
And then I kind of tailor it from there.
Okay, so based on audience size
Mhm.
and the possibility, right? So these are all good responses. What we're gonna do is on your worksheet, based on our experience with working with and coaching top producing realtors, typically the answer to that is a percentage of the GCI, right? So Anna said it differently, but essentially it's the same, meaning here's my target audience, here's what I expect to get from it, you know, therefore I'm gonna spend this much. If you want to create a very technical framework behind spending for your campaigns, right? Instead of saying, you know, I feel like spending $5 today, or $10 or $100, right? What you do is you take 10 to 15% of your GCI, your gross commission income, and that becomes your ad budget, right? Some realtors use it as their marketing budget, ad budget, however it is. Pretty much your budget to promote yourself or to communicate what you have to offer out there. So for example, in this case, let's say for example, how much is the commission potential for that property, Karen? The numbers
20,
are
yeah,
crunchy.
yeah. 22.
22K,
2,000, yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So 10% of that would be 2,200, right? So theoretically, you may have the ability to spend up to 2,200 to put into this campaign. And that's a lot of money, right? But that's a big difference between somebody who says, you know, I feel like spending $100 to promote this listing, right? And then you start to think, is $100 going to be enough? There's a reason why 10 to 15% is roughly what top producing realtors spend on marketing and advertising themselves. And that's because, you know, some of the leads you get or some of the inquiries you get will not result in a sale, right? Some will, some may buy this particular property, but when you factor that all in, you're looking at about a 10 to 15% ad spend or marketing spend in order for you to be able to capture a sale, right?
So when you refer to 10 to 15%,
Yes.
does that also include the video and drone, the photography, feature, like those other marketing materials? So
That's-
it should be
yeah.
no more than 10 to 15?
That's a good point, and that's why there's a range, right? So for example, I mean, if you're looking at a strict hard cost of ad budget, which is 10%, you're looking at $2,200 just for the ad spend, right? But then of course you've got to add to your spending the video production, image production, and so that's why there's a bit of a range, right? So when you look at the end of the year of how much you spend in marketing, typically it'll fall into around that 10 to 15%, right? If you're a top producing realtor, that's typically what the range ends up being. And so it's up to you to decide, and you know, this is no way set in stone. Some of our agents who have been new to the business but needed to really ramp up their advertising, some of them spend like 30% plus in their marketing campaigns, which includes video production, of course, images, copywriting, and all that, plus the ad spend, right? And so the answer to that is now dependent upon, you know, the experiments or the ads that you actually run and how well they do, or you know what kind of results you get out of it. So based on the above budget, the next question there is how much could you spend per month on this particular campaign? So Karen's campaign's not going to run for a year, whereas Anna's may run for a year or more, because you're continuously building your list, right? There's nothing right or wrong about either. It's just a different situation in what kind of ad you're running, right? And so Karen might have a time period of 6 months, let's say, or 3 months, right? The question here becomes, if my ad budget is $2,200, right, and I'm running this campaign for 3 months, how much does that work out? And I think that's about $700 roughly per month, right? Whereas Anna might say, you know, my goal is to make $100K from this segment of my marketing, which is referrals. 10% of that is 10,000 divided by 12. I could be spending what, 800-ish? Is that what it is? 800, 9,600 about 800, 850 per month on that particular campaign. Does that make sense? Next question is, let's simulate a cost per lead. So I hope you're all tracking how much it costs you to end up getting a lead. So for example, if you're door knocking, it's not a hard fixed dollar cost, right? It may be number of doors before you get an actual lead, right? But then when you calculate all that, your time is worth money, if I'm not mistaken, right? So when you're door knocking, you should really be apportioning a dollar figure to how much is your hour worth doing this versus doing something else, right? And so if you calculate your hourly worth as 100, 150, or 200, then you divide how many hours do I spend door knocking, how many leads do I get out of it, right? Does that make sense? So I've taken the digital and I've taken it to a traditional example right now, and so you'll be able to find out, maybe it costs you $50 a lead, or $100 a lead, right? If you're worth $100 an hour and you get one lead per hour, each of those leads costs you $100. So now let's take it to digital, right? If you spend X amount of money, you divide it by the number of leads you get in order for you to be able to get a cost per lead. This is very important because later on we're going to talk about conversions, right? You need to know how many leads or how many conversations you get in order for you to be able to get an actual sale. And you'll be able to scale up your advertising campaigns once you know that, okay, after every 50 leads I get one sale. If you knew that after every 50 leads you get a sale and it costs you, let's say, $100 per lead, so that works out to what, $5,000 per lead? That's a lot of money, right? But if that gets you a $20,000 commission check, which works out to 25%, which is a bit higher, but let's just say, for example, that's what it does. Would you keep spending that money if you knew systematically you'd be able to get a sale out after every X number of leads? Would you do it? The same question is like this. If you knew that door knocking would result in X number of leads and for X number of leads you get a sale, right? Would you keep door knocking? If you knew you could get a sale out of doing door knocking, of course you would, right? And the proof of it is you guys are doing it. And the proof of it is even some of our realtors making in excess of $1 million in GCI are still door knocking, right? So if you know that after X number of leads you're going to get a sale, right? You will keep doing the activities, or you will keep spending the money needed in order for you to get that result. Does that make sense? Right? Okay. So that's up. So the message behind that is it's up to you to determine what your cost per lead is based on how much did you spend for the campaign. So Karen's example, 2,200. How many leads do you get out of it? That's what we're going to track over the next couple of weeks. The great thing about this is that there's always going to be a follow-through, right? So if Karen does spend 2,200, I mean, I'm not telling you you're going to spend that much money, but it depends. Let's say you spend $100, you get one lead from that campaign, right? And a lead is defined as what? What do you guys define as leads? Somebody who's looking to buy or sell
Within the next year.
within a certain time period. So for some of you, a lead might be a year. For some of you, it might be 30 days. Otherwise, it's not a lead, right? So your definition of lead is very important here because the effectiveness of your campaign depends on what you define as a lead, right? So for Karen's example and for Anna's example, we're going to run these campaigns, and with your permission, I'd love to track your numbers and see what you get out of it. So, I mean, is that okay? Yeah. Anna's example, because she's building out a referral network, a lead is a realtor who's going to look to refer to her. So it may not necessarily be a specific time frame at this point, right? For her, a lead is somebody who could potential contact, right? So the definition of lead depends on the context of what it is that you're trying to achieve. For Karen, a lead is somebody who wants to buy that property, right? If not that, then somebody who does want to buy some kind of property or sell some kind of property, right? Not somebody who's going to be looking for a year or 2 years,
No.
right? So that's the difference here. In the farm area, right, a lead is somebody who's looking to buy or sell within the next, for me, it was in the next 3 to 6 months. That was sort of my sweet spot. Anything more than that, a year, they go on just my mailing list and they'll continue getting a campaign every single month of what it is, like, you know, what's going on in the area. I would send out monthly newsletters. Anybody, like, I did get some people who wanted to do something within the next 30 days, but they may have been receiving my material for a long time, except they registered as a lead at that point. So it's very important for you to define what that means. Now on the next page, and then we'll get into the technical aspect of it, I promise, that's what a lot of you are hungry for, right? Is what percentage of leads do you estimate you can close, right? And this is where we get to the idea that if you know you can close X number of leads, you can scale a campaign and know that you'll be able to spend that kind of money consistently and be able to get those results. If that makes sense, right? So what is your close rate? Now this varies, remember when I love to bring the door knocking example because they run parallel to each other. Traditional and digital marketing for real estate runs parallel to each other. So door knocking campaign might be, I need to speak with 500 people before I make a sale, right? But remember, in between that, you knock on thousands of doors, you talk to 500 people. Out of those 500 people, 300 people might be interested. Out of those 300 people, you might only get 30 appointments, which is pretty high. If you're doing that, that's great. Out of 30 appointments, you make X amount of listings. Out of X amount of listings, you make X sale or one sale, right? I'm just making these numbers up. But when you're looking at a digital real estate marketing campaign, it's a similar concept. Based on number of leads that I get, how many of them do I actually translate to an appointment? So somebody might respond to your ad, Karen. Do you actually end up meeting that person in person, right? Anna might get a lead, which means somebody who signs up for that campaign. But what happens after that? How many leads or how many realtors do you need in your database to make that one sale? And once you have that number, now you know your closing percentage. It might be 1%, right? So when I factored in, and this may not be a surprise to you because a lot of you, I'm sure, have attended marketing seminars and courses and all of that sort of thing and workshops, but my percentage was about 1%. So every time I get 100 leads, and these are, remember, cold traffic leads, people who didn't know me, right, at the time that they see this flyer or they see the ad, but I would need 100 leads before I would make a sale. So it was about a 1%, right?
That's
So-
what I wrote down, 300, 30, 10% is 3 deals for 300 door knocks.
If it works out that way.
That's the same number she used.
Well,
Yeah.
right? It depends
Yeah.
on,
That's-
exactly, right?
Right.
The reason why is, I mean, in all of marketing, really, you can't get lower than 1%. Lower than 1%
Yeah.
is what, 0,
Right.
which means no result, right? And so
Yeah.
this is pure numbers game,
Yeah.
right? Now, I also ran, in addition to this business, I also ran a lot of online lead generation using search engine optimization, which was very easy at the time. My closing percentage for those leads was 16%, right? So I tracked all of these numbers. Why? Because those leads, they made it through the channels. They're very specific about what they're looking for. Therefore, they were a lot more qualified leads, right? Yes.
Speaking of numbers,
Yes.
the numbers I kind of use when I'm put me on the spot here.
Yes.
Stage fright.
It's okay.
The numbers I use when I'm telephone soliciting or door knocking
Yeah.
are pretty similar to each other. For example, telephone soliciting, I'll go, okay, 3 hours. In 3 hours, I'm going to get 10 leads.
Yes.
And then those 10 leads, eventually, I'll probably get 4 appointments out of them.
Mhm.
Now the 4 appointments, I'll probably get half maybe, so there's 2.
Yes.
So in other words, for 3 hours, eventually I'll get 2 deals out
Yes.
of it. For every 3 hours,
Mhm.
like, I mean, those are pretty high numbers. It always
Right.
doesn't work. These days, the market's a little tougher,
Yes.
but it all depends on the time of year. Spring, it's really high, it's much higher, obviously, right?
Exactly.
So it depends, but as long as you do your numbers,
Yes.
and whatever, everybody's numbers are different.
Yes.
So just calculate out how many you actually get out of those,
Yeah.
and then work those
Yeah.
numbers.
How many of you, I'm going to put all of you now on the spot, how many of you are doing that? Raise your hand. Tracking your numbers. It's okay, this is not going to be displayed for everybody.
No.
Only you will see it. No. And you see the biggest challenge now, right? One of the biggest transformations for me was I started tracking these numbers rather than just be like, every realtor who just puts stuff out there, but they don't really know where their business is coming from. And so that was, what was your name?
It's Mike.
Mike? Yeah, Mike. So great example from Mike, right? Knowing exactly, if I spend X amount of time making these calls, I will guaranteed make this. And those numbers they will change. So today you might need to spend X amount of money on Facebook ads. Tomorrow it might be completely different. But the point is you've got to track these numbers down in order for you to have a systemized business, right? So now knowing your closing percentage, thank you Mike for that example, what will you earn? So for example, in Karen's example, it's very easy because it's one property sale, right? So if you know you're gonna make 22,000, that's what you're earning. In Anna's example, right, what's the average price in Durham that you sell?
Around 600.
Around 600,000, and what's the commission typically in Durham these days? 2.5. So let's do our commission calculation, which all realtors are great at. 600,000 times 2.5%.
15,000.
15,000? Yeah, good. Remember, 600 is between, what is it, 400,000, 2.5 is 10, 800 is 20, so right in between that is 15. So if you want to make your, how do I make my year happen, and you need a final commission check, you know how to do a quick calculation for it, right? So that's $15,000, right? So when you look at $15,000 average commission, now multiplied by the number of deals you're expecting to do, what is your GCI? And this number should work, again, like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
At the very beginning, we talked about a GCI, then based on a percentage, it should go back to that same number, right? So 15,000, maybe 6 deals, that works out to about 90, a bit more than that would be about 100. And so you see that cycle. I make this much, I spend this much, right? I get this many number of deals, and now you've completed that part of the activity. Okay, so now we're gonna work on the actual hands-on part, which is what you've been waiting for. But do you now see how much actually has to go through the planning of a proper campaign before you can make a successful one, right? A lot of realtors would have just, let's slap something together, let's put it up there, let's hope and pray that it's gonna work, and then it doesn't. Maybe they get lucky, maybe they get a couple of leads. But if you want to be very systematic about it in order for you to be successful at these campaigns and not waste a lot of money and not lose a lot of money just blowing out, your ad budget, you've got to go through this activity. And so what I want you to do with these worksheets is hang on to it, make copies of it. If you want more copies of it, I'm happy to share it with you. But use it as a framework for all of the campaigns. And whenever any of our realtors approach me and say, hey, John Deere, I want to do this Facebook ad or this, the first thing that I go through, and this is what I'm doing with Karen now, right, and Anna's volunteered as well, is I go through this step-by-step process. And without this, I wouldn't recommend you to run any ad, because then you're just doing it, without a solid foundation or without a real objective. Yes?
That's the problem I have, is I run the ad and I get no response, and I'm starting to think, oh, it's a campaign, you gotta do it long term, and
Yes.
still no response. It's like, how much money do you keep pumping into the Facebook ad or whatever ad you're doing before you're gambling to see any results from it? Or maybe I'm on the wrong course here, maybe I should abandon ship and try another course here, so that's where I always seem to get stuck, is like, should I stay the course, or should I,
Right.
come up with a new plan?
Yeah, and remember, as realtors, we are in the sales business, right? Not many of us are experienced marketers, right? We certainly don't have, we contribute to RE/MAX's multi-million-dollar ad fund, which is great, because that's the reason why RE/MAX is the most recognized brand in real estate, right? But as Mike said, do you run the course? Do you keep going with it, or the moment there's no results, do you just give it up, right? And so I want you to go through this framework of coming up with your objective and strategies every time you run any kind of a campaign, even if it's just, even if it's an offline, not digital, even if it's a traditional campaign, you've got to run through these numbers in order for you to be able to identify what's going to work and what's not. We're going to take a 1-minute break, and then we're going to go into a hands-on session where we'll use Karen's example, and if we have time, we're also going to use Anna's example to build out an actual digital real estate marketing campaign based on what we've discussed today. All right, so let's take a 1-minute break.
1 minute.